Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So good to be here. And I was telling Nora and Candace, I just didn't think about being in an office with a white background and my white shirt and my white hair. And so if I look like a ghost, just a face floating, I apologize for that. But just focus on the orange, I guess. I don't know. So again, it's really great to see everyone. And if you put yourself in front of a piece of paper and a pencil, we're going to be doing some exercises in a little while. So just to have those handy would be great. So let me give you a little bit of background about MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Inventory. And so Nora, you can start the slides, please. So while she's doing that, there are a number of different personality tests or, thank you, Nick. Oh, I can't move the slides, right? I need to tell you. Okay. Okay, next slide. There's a number of different ones out there like DISC and StrengthsFinder and others, but Myers-Briggs Type Inventory is the grandfather of them all. It's based on the psychology theory of Carl Jung in 1923. And in 1940, his daughter and daughter-in-law sort of took it to the next level and began to implement a system for helping people understand why sometimes they feel out of their comfort zones in certain situations and they don't know why. And people began to really relate to this application. And so for over 75 years, people have used the MBTI to become more satisfied and successful in their careers, to build teams that function harmoniously, and to build appreciation for different people's strengths. So let's go right into it. One more sort of slide on how MBTI could be used to manage your career. I won't dwell on this too long, but every time you could do something to raise your own self-awareness about what your own strengths and appreciate others, what makes you feel happy in your job. This is a big one during the pandemic. Some people feel very happy to be able to work remotely. Other people are like, I can't wait to get back in the office. I need people. And when you're thinking about moving up in the organization, to be thinking about where you want to be, to be yourself, to be your full and happiest self in your job, and what kind of specialization, if you stay in your own department where you are now, which I'm sure all your managers want you to do, to be able to identify where you could bring the most value into an area of expertise and what would make you happiest and feel most fulfilled. So next slide, please. Okay, we're going to use that piece of paper and that pencil. I would like you to please write your name. Just pick it up, write your name. And I'll give you a half a second to do that. Is there anyone who does not have a pencil or a piece of paper? Okay. All right. How many of you are using your right hand to write your name? Okay. Anybody using their left hand? I'm not sure I can see everybody actually, now that I think about it. Any left-handers here? Okay, Safira, I see you. So when you pick up a pen to write your name, you don't even think about whether you're going with your left hand or your right hand. You just automatically select your preferred hand, and there's no right or wrong in this selection. It's the same with the MBTI dichotomies. You have a preferred way that you engage with the world, that you perceive things as you move through the day. And since your job flows directly out of all of these elements, you bring your personality to it. So it's really good to spend some time figuring out what makes you tick, and in the process come to help you understand what makes others tick. Again, there's no right or wrong in any of these. I think the most helpful thing that can come out is that you really appreciate other people's strengths when maybe you are not as comfortable in certain settings. or situation. So let's go on to the next slide. When you did the assessment, you were asked to make some selections about what you would do in certain situations. There are some things, some activities that you feel like, wow, I know exactly what I would do in this situation. I call that sort of the fast lane. That's the way I feel the most comfortable. And then there are other situations where you might say, oh, there's a traffic jam here. I feel like I can't move comfortably or as fast or as efficiently as I would like to. So in the I and the E dichotomy, we're going to be talking about where do you actually direct your energy most comfortably. And even though the extroversion and introversion, often people think about whether you're talkative or not talkative, as we'll come to understand, it's not about that. It's about where the energy flows in yourself and how you direct it into the outer world. So don't think about it being whether you're, gregarious or not. We'll go into that a little more later. How you gather information. That's where the sensing and the intuition are the two dichotomies. How you make decisions. What is the process you feel most comfortable using in that? And how you deal with the outside world that the Myers-Briggs folks call judging and perceiving. Again, these words have meanings for us in sort of a different context, but in this context, we're going to go into what they mean at Myers-Briggs. So go into the next slide, please. So could we go back a minute? Actually, I would appreciate it if you would take a minute and in the chat, write what you do after work to recharge your batteries. So in the chat, it's been a busy day. You've done a lot at work. What is it that recharges you and makes you feel like, okay, I'm letting down a little bit? So just put a word or two in the chat. Okay. Holly goes for a walk, workout and cook, go to the gym, yard work, wine. I call my mom. Love that. Okay, Netflix, long walk. Okay. Okay, call my family, go for a walk. Call my mom, also call my mom. Nice. Okay. So now we can go to the next slide. Even eyes, extroverts and introverts have definite preferences about where it is that they re-energize. I will confess to being an extreme extrovert. I need to be around people. I need to have group interaction. I love meetings. I know that introverts do not love meetings. If I was your preferred way, you probably would be the last thing that you want to do. Dulcea, I don't know, and Wendy, you are the only eyes in the 5 people that sent me the results of their assessment. So I'm going to guess that you would prefer, and that's kind of, you would love to sit in an easy chair, have a cup of coffee or something, and just be by yourself, just to think through what happened for the day. Wendy's nodding. Yes, you should be, you can be proud of it, although there's no judgment here. So I am married to an introvert, and so I know that he needs space to, in fact, he loves it that I go off to work because he can be alone, he can think through what's going on. I go to work, I'm with a lot of people, I'm very happy, and when we come back together, I know that he's going to be ready to have me barge in the room, sort of looking sort of like this little cartoon here. It can be a bit much for some people, but that's really where I get my energy, is externally. People like the extroverts often need to talk in order to know what they are thinking. So introverts need to think first and then talk. So when you're in a meeting, you're going to find some people who just never shut up. And you're like, please, You're not giving anyone else a chance to talk. But actually, the introverts are going to be okay with that in some way, as long as they're given a chance after they've had a processing time to share what they're thinking. So does that make sense to folks? I'm seeing Sophia nodding and smiling, so I'm guessing that she's relating to that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, again, piece of paper, pencil, please. In a minute, I'm going to show you a picture. And I want you to take 2 minutes to write about the picture. Okay, those are the instructions. Write about the picture. I'm setting my timer for 2 minutes. And when I say go, if you prefer to write in the chat, you can, but 2 minutes is kind of a long time for a chat. Okay, everybody ready? Anybody not ready? Raise your hand, please. All right, looks like everybody's set. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, that's it. Put down your pen, please. And somebody be willing to share what they wrote about the picture?
I'll share. So like in the most of the middle part, I just kind of saw chaos and messiness, and I thought like a kid, did this. I tried to kind of make sense of parts that looked like something or reminded me of something. So like the back, I initially was like, those are hills, but I was like, that's blue, that's probably water. So I think I try to just make sense of certain parts of it, but I kind of try to stay away from the middle chaotic part. I don't know if I can say that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for jumping in. Someone else, would you share what you wrote?
I'll go. So similarly to Wendy, I also felt like it was like in a world of chaos, choose peace, because kind of in the center, but towards the left, it looks like one figure, but I do see like light, dark, And there's just a lot going on, but it still feels peaceful. And then it kind of looks like there's another figure in the far right corner. So it's like everything's going on, but there's still like support and all the things that are needed or necessary for someone to like find their peace. So like, even though there's a lot going on, it was still very calming to look at. So that was like a focus word for me too.
Great. So you're seeing chaos, but some support there. Is that summarizing it? Great, thank you so much. Who else? Let's do one more.
I'll go. It's kind of opposite. I said that in the center is kind of like more of a gloomy emotions. And when you move further towards the right, it's kind of chaos. And on the left side, the colors are more subtle and intertwining. So it's like a more of a calming emotions.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Anybody else that really, would really like to share? Same. I'll stay in the backwater that I identified as water at least. Same. Looks like someone had a bad day. Okay. So let's think about this. Of the folks who spoke, Wendy identified something as an object. Am I right, Wendy? You saw a picture in there. I think you said you saw water in the background. And what else did you see in there?
Where the water is, and I like right above it, it kind of looks like the sky, like when it's like sunset in a sense. I also noticed like the bottom, like left-hand side where there's like a blob of purple that I also thought was water, but I was like, that's, it's purple, I don't know, but that's kind of like just like the wave portions reminded me of it. So I think I did see like some of the figures that I think Nigel identified, but I think I related more to what I identified as water.
Okay, thank you. Nora, could we have the next slide, please? So people who prefer the sensing in terms of how they see the world, how they want to interact in it, often describe the actual physical attributes of the picture. The color, the shapes, the artist's name, the size, they try to make sense out of the shapes. So Wendy, who is proudly an S, I'm assuming, since she's proud of everything, fits right into that. Is there anyone else who saw figures, could try to make sense out of it? Yeah. So sensors want to make sense. They want facts. They want to use all their senses, the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste, and they're very practical and realistic. Sometimes others will usually agree with the interpretations of the shapes. So if you are an N, you could actually see, once you talked about it, you probably said, yes, I can make that out. So let's go on to the next slide. Those folks who prefer intuition, so those people in the room would be Nigel, Madison, and again, if you didn't send me your letters, you'll have to just self-identify. And please feel free to use the chat. They'll interpret, you will have, and you did, interpret the picture, seeing possibilities and meanings. I have had people that have written whole stories or even a poem, sort of the big picture interpretation of things. Many of you talked about being chaotic, subtle. What were some of the other emotions that you felt? Help me remember. Being supportive. I remember. What else? Looking in the end. It looks like someone had a bad day. Yeah, that's definitely someone who is intuitive, uses their intuition to interpret things. The biggest experience, or the most powerful experience I ever had with a room full of sensors and intuitors, was a Myers-Briggs workshop that I attended, and the instructor knew ahead of time whether we were N's or S's. And there were 6 of each. She put us in 2 different rooms. She put a piece of paper on the table and a glass, an empty glass. And she gave the same instructions to both groups. To one group, she said, or to both groups, she said, make a list and don't touch the glass. So the sensors went right about making a list and instructions about how you could turn the glass over without touching it using the piece of paper. They just went right about the task. They were all about doing something. Those of us who were intuitors, we just said, oh, she said, don't touch it and make a list. And so we started making lists of names of bridges, lists baby names, all kinds of lists. It had nothing to do with trying to do anything with the glass or the piece of paper. And so it really brought to home that when you have a group, a work group, and when you're on a team, there are some people who you're going to point to and say, please help us figure out how to get this done. And there's going to be other people in the room who are going to think more big picture, where you're going to say, let's get outside the box a little bit and think of a different way to do this, or have a more creative approach to something. So you'll know when to call on those people, because they all bring value to the group. And you need each other. I know I definitely need the sensors many times. All right, let's go. Let's see. Let's go into it on the next slide, please. Okay, this is just reiterating the sensors, like the facts, the very realistic, specific, stay in the present, where the intuitors like to be pretty imaginative, more general, theoretical, think about what could be as opposed to what is. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's play. Your work team has done a great job on a difficult project. Congratulations. The team has been awarded a free trip to Hawaii. Ooh. Unfortunately, there are only 3 tickets for your team that consists of 5 people. How do you decide who goes and who doesn't? I'd like you to turn on your mics and talk about this and see if you can come to a conclusion, a consensus.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I would do it randomly. That would be my, put them all in a hat or something.
Same. Names in a hat or some kind of wheel or numbers, something, but definitely randomly.
Yes.
Would anybody else think about it differently?
I did. I was just gonna say, who really wants to go? Like, kind of, not necessarily go by that, but I think I would feel a little, thinking of like, if people are so eager to go, I would be more willing to give up, like, for example, my ticket.
Also, I think it's a good idea to also ask who's afraid of flying. Like, I don't like to fly, so I'll be like, give somebody else the ticket. I'll stay.
You could also, if it's a round trip ticket, you could change the flight back and then set them all to Hawaii and then split up the difference. So it's actually a cheaper, cost-effective way so everyone can still go in a different way.
Right. Wendy, did you pipe in?
I did.
Yeah.
I said, like, I think if I had a team, I would, figure out who really wants to go, just because I think I'm more like, I'm more willing to like give my spot up if the group wants to go, but that's just like a me thing. I think I just tend to do that.
Yeah. Has anybody else got a different approach about how you could decide? These are great ideas. Very creative. Let's go to the next slide. Interestingly, Wendy is the only T in the group. And so I was particularly interested in how she might approach things. And she was pretty analytical. Let's decide who really wants to go before we, go ahead and decide anything else. Putting it in a hat is not too analytical. But Wendy's going to be using her head, okay? And she's going to be analyzing, and she's going to be fair, because obviously it's fair if nobody wants to, if somebody doesn't want to go, then they give somebody else a chance. So that would be the thinking approach. The feeling approach, and most of you are feelers, not strongly so. You're sort of, let's see. Laura's pretty strong, actually, and Nigel is pretty strong. Oh no, yeah. Nigel is the strongest in their F. So that would be trying to think about what's fair. But let's say somebody has never had a chance to go to Hawaii in their whole life. Maybe you could find out if somebody's been there before. The feelers often start with trying to avoid conflict, trying to think about what is fair in the sense of sort of social justice fairness, as opposed to who's done the most work on the project. That's also a fair way to think about it, but much more subjective. I'm trying to understand the big picture, trying to be more empathetic. Does that make sense? All right, and Wendy, I want to just say you are so valuable to this group. When you have a lot of people who can be maybe sort of not all that comfortable all the time going by the book, you're the person who's going to go by the book. You're going to be the business head in the group, just saying. But you need them too to soften up a little bit sometimes. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, you're one of the lucky ones. You're going to Hawaii and you leave in a month. How do you prepare? So if you could put it in the chat, but do not hit enter until I tell you to, so that you aren't influenced by anyone else. You're going to Hawaii, you're leaving in a month. How do you prepare? Before we hit enter, I'd like you to turn on your mics and just tell me about it. What are you going to do? Getting ready to go.
Get some medication for the flight. That's my first thought.
Aha.
Get something that I can take to keep me calm through the flight.
Okay, so you may be one of those people who say, somebody else can go, I don't need to go, I'll stay back.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, but you have to go somehow, and you're going to get your medications ready, because this is not going to be a really happy time for you.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sophia, you want to say what you wrote?
Oh, sure. I said buy sunscreen. Look at activities that support the local culture. Ask a friend who's previously lived there what to do and not do, and find good books to bring.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Would anybody else do something different?
I would look at a hotel reservation first, or if I'm staying with my family because I'm from there. And then I would also make sure if it's a wet or dry season, because you have to look at the forecast. And then I would make a whole itinerary list with all my car rentals, boarding pass, what I need to pack. Super planner.
Yeah, super planner, right. Anyone else? I would start packing right away, or at least start putting things into a suitcase right away. Anybody?
That was one of the first things that I was thinking of, packing like ahead of time, because, you know, sometimes when you're going on a trip, there's so many small things that you don't remember if you do it like last minute. So I thought about that, and then I thought about like my job and who would cover. But I think it was mostly like packing was the first thing, and just making sure I had everything I needed.
Right. I'm like that too. I get out my suitcase, I lay it out on a bed somewhere. And then when I find things I want to take, I just throw it in the direction of the suitcase. And then when it comes actually the night before, when I'm really packing, I really just make the final decisions about what's going. Anyone else do it differently?
So packing was second on my list. The first was making a to-do list for like work and my personal life, just of things that might need immediate attention or things that might get pushed off to the side while I'm away. That way I can plan accordingly. And then I just had, similarly to Dulcia, research like things and activities that I would want to do and start to tap into those.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else want to chime in? Anybody do it differently? All right. If you put something in the chat, you can certainly push your enter button now. That'd be fine. We can see schedule time. Oh, look at that. Get some medication. Okay, we saw that. What was that one about scheduling time off? Wow, you're really, let me see this. Bunch of lists. Okay. Yes. Yep. Bunch of lists. We have a lot of list makers. Okay, so I was checking on the results from the 5 people that took the test, and we have 4 judges. Let's go to the next slide. List makers, starting right away, acting on set priorities, like to have control of things right away. And Dulcia is our P. I'm guessing that you wait, I forget what you said, Dulcia, but do you wait until sort of the last minute to pack?
Like maybe 25%.
Okay.
Like I'm not home right now and I woke up at 5:15 this morning and I was doing last minute packing for where I am. Then I did most of my stuff last night, but the rest of it I did this morning.
Okay, so the P's typically like to leave their options open. Let's not make any final decisions just yet, because there might be something I might want to change. I'm not going to make all my reservations until I absolutely have to, because I might want to do something else. They tend to really find it very interesting to keep their, again, as I said, options open. J's like myself, and honestly, it can change in terms of whether it's something I'm doing for leisure or whether it's something at work. Sometimes these things can be a little bit situational, but I find I really need to make the decision. I like to feel like I'm in control, and I really don't feel comfortable when somebody keeps putting off making the final decision. I worked with a colleague. We were working on a report that we had to do, and it involved talking to a lot of other people to get data. And I felt like we had worked on this report a while. I was done. I wanted it to be delivered. I wanted to put it behind me. And she kept wanting to talk to one more person. And I really didn't like her for a while, and I could tell she didn't really like me very well either. And she came back to work one day and said, I know what the problem is. And it was like, oh my gosh, she knows there's a problem. And she said, you know, she went to a Myers-Briggs workshop and she realized that as a J, I needed to get this done and move on. And as a P, she needed to do all her research, figure out that just look into every nook and cranny that she could to make sure we had everything, we hadn't missed anything. And the only way that we finally were able to sort of relax was when we set a deadline, because both of us knew that the end was coming. I was like, okay, I can relinquish control for that while. And she just did all those things that she needed to do to feel comfortable with the final results. So you may have had that experience also in working on a team where some people just never seem to get to the end. And if you're a J, you're feeling like, let's just get this done. I'm uncomfortable until I can move on. All right, who has desks that look like the one in the upper left? Okay. And how many of you have more of a P looking desk? I'm not seeing any hands. Nobody? Yeah, that's right. There's only one P in the 5 that I got results from. Okay, let's move on. A focuses on completing tasks, makes decisions quickly, wants the essentials. B focuses on starting tasks, postpones decisions, and wants to find out more about the job. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So according to the MBTI Institute, this is how it breaks down in our society. I think this is the time when I'd really like you to all, if you did take the assessment, if you could put in the chat what your letters were, so we can see who's in the room. Okay. Who else is there? Let me see. I'm trying to look at my chat here. Interesting that, is there anybody that is exactly the same? ENFJs, Madison and Nigel. Wendy, you have a lot of responsibility to bring a different perspective to a lot of tasks. And so that makes you particularly, see what this says, message, particularly valuable in the group. And so the others need to be aware where you feel like you always want to talk to the same person who sees things exactly the way that you do. It's very valuable sometimes to seek out the person who's is going to give you a different perspective. And that is going to end up with having the best results. They say that the upper left and the lower left, lower right, sorry, the ISTJs and the ENTJs tend to be leaders in a group, which is kind of, I think, people who can are very comfortable expressing, taking charge, expressing a vision, and implementing a plan. But that probably has more to do with the T's and the J's that they have in common than anything else. Let's look at the next slide. Again, in the United States, according to the MBTI Institute, I's are more prevalent, which I find kind of interesting. And I guess I'm going to ask you, what do you notice about this? Is there anything that jumps out at you? You can turn on your mics. Remember, the S's are the ones who like very concrete. They perceive things very concretely, very task-oriented. And in this country, it seems to be something that we find more of. I'm surprised with the E and the I. I would have thought that there were more E's, but that's just probably because I am one. And the others are not that far apart. And I found that a lot of you had, were sort of on the cusp. You weren't sort of very strongly either a T and an F, or very strongly a J or a P. You could go either way depending on a situation. And if you are one way or the other in any of these, you can program yourself when you need to perceive things in a way that is not within your comfort zone. In other words, is not your natural way of looking at something. Okay. So what do you think? I'm really curious. How do you think this will affect how you might work within your team at Dana-Farber? Anybody have any insights? Were there surprises? You're still thinking.
Now that I'll share in our team, for many years, it was just two of us, myself and Rachita, and I am an ESFJ,
Mhm.
and Rachita is an ISTJ. That's that top upper left, right? And knowing, and we've done multiple assessments, and just understanding our styles are like complete opposites, but there is really an appreciation because what I tend, she stretches me in terms of, staying, she's a very task focused person. I'm someone that is really driven by feelings and relationships, and I talk things through to think things out. And it's really been a process of being able to appreciate each other's style. And it's okay at times, we definitely get frustrated with each other's style, but knowing what we know about each other, it has just definitely made us a stronger team, you know. So it is not healthy to have a whole lot of the same types in one space on one team. So if there are some out there looking at the list in the chat and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not like anybody else, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because it takes just these different types and these different strengths, and to to make the work progress and move on, and understanding, just this gaining the understanding that everyone is different, everyone has strengths that they're bringing to the table, and yeah, so I can appreciate that.
Thanks, Candace. Candace, you and I are ENFJs, as are Nigel and Madison. So we really, we would have a great time going to a party and just relating to each other, and probably just spend the whole night having fun and thinking of crazy things to do. And
You're an N, do you say? I'm an S. I'm an S. It's funny because I
Oh,
do
you're an
like
S?
concrete. I'm an S, and because there is a level of concreteness I need with certain things. So yeah, yes.
Oh, I thought you said N, sorry.
No,
So
S.
Maura and you have a similar profile,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. But we still, though, that E part will enjoy being at the party together.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just share, I have a really, my dearest friend in the world is, I think she's, well, I forget which one it is, but I think it's fencing and including, she never did finish painting and wallpapering her kitchen because she had to look at one more sample, one more idea. She just couldn't get to it because making the decision was just too hard. She thought it's sort of like, I'm not gonna, what if I miss something? And when I go in and I'm going to pick a color, I go in, I say, this one will work, or I'll take 3 colors home and decide one or the other is going to work. So, and it kind of, I just always marvel at that. And whenever I say, let's make a plan to do something, she'll say, well, let's tentatively say that it's going to be on Thursday, but something might come up. That again, just kind of is difficult for me, but I know that she can also help me stay open. All right, anybody else have any sharings about maybe you don't want to talk about coworkers, although you can. Any other relationships in your world where you've given some better understanding of how they perceive things? Maybe, Nora, we could go back one slide. Oh, that's okay. It's kind of hard to remember what all those different letters are. Even I get them a little, I'm very comfortable with the I and the E's, but the S's and the T's and the F's and the J's can be, there you go. Okay, yeah, thank you. That's what I need. Cool. All right, well, it's 10:51. I'm hoping that this has been valuable for you. This is, believe me, a very basic introduction to this whole idea of MBTI. I hope that your interest is whetted and that you will want to know more. Got a couple of recommendations on a slide. The certification to become a facilitator for MBTI is very intense and very valuable. People can get hired to come into groups and companies to help them better understand the dynamics in their company. I am not certified, but I have read many articles and attended many workshops. So I'm pretty comfortable with doing the basics, but you might want to delve into more, including Isabel Myers and Peter Myers' books on entitled Gifts Differing. The Do What You Are, I use that book a lot in my coaching, in helping people figure out what are your options and potentials for career directions to go in, to begin to do exploration of ideas that you may not have thought of before. And there is a fellow named John Haxton who has webinars and articles, one in particular that was in the Harvard Business Review on how different personality types cope with and always on culture. So I highly recommend any of those. I will be sending out the slides, or Dora will, Rachita will, and I hope that this has been beneficial. So I hope you have a wonderful day, whatever that means to you, and mark your calendars for the next presentation, which will be on crucial conversations in about a month. And that's going to be presented by the DFCI Learning and Organization Development. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Nelda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots to think about. Thank you.